There are horror franchises that survive by repeating themselves. And then there are horror franchises that survive by finding one new way to make you say, okay, that's messed up. That is exactly the lane Evil Dead Burn seems to be taking. And based on this new trailer, it looks like the series is not interested in politely coasting on nostalgia. It wants to add gasoline, throw the match, and remind everyone why Deadites are still some of the nastiest monsters horror has ever created. What immediately stands out is how aggressive this movie feels. Not just violent. Evil Dead has always been violent. I mean aggressive in imagination. The trailer does not feel like it is checking franchise boxes and moving on. It feels like it is actively looking for new ways to corrupt the formula without losing the things that made the formula work for 45 years in the first place. That is a very tricky balance, but if this footage is telling the truth, Evil Dead Burn may have found it. The setup is already strong. A grieving family gathers after the death of its patriarch, and before they can even process that loss. The arrival of a new book of the dead cracks the night open and lets the familiar nightmare back. In that is pure Evil Dead DNA, family pain, buried secrets, spiritual contamination, and one horrible decision that turns private grief into public bloodshed. The series has always understood that the best Deadite stories do not begin with random chaos. They begin with emotional vulnerability. Something is already broken before the evil even gets there, and this trailer leans hard into that. There is a real sense that the Deadites are not just attacking bodies. They are attacking fault lines. Every scream, every accusation, every family secret suddenly feels like part of the possession. That is one of the reasons Evil Dead works better than so many other demonic horror series. The evil is loud, messy, and physically brutal, yes, but it also knows how to weaponize whatever is already festering under the surface. Evil Dead Burn looks like it understands that completely. At the same time, the trailer wisely keeps the essential franchise markers intact. The Kandarian force still rips through spaces in that iconic first-person rush, turning architecture itself into a threat. The Deadites still look like they were built out of mockery, pain, and spite. And Alice using head shears as a weapon feels like the exact kind of improvised, slightly deranged tool choice this universe thrives on. It is not Ash's chainsaw, obviously, but it absolutely understands the spirit of turning household or practical objects into survival mythology. Now, let's talk about the detail that may actually matter most. In the middle of all this blood and screaming, the trailer appears to hint at something the theatrical films have never really committed to before: a Deadite animal. If that dog lunging at Alice really is possessed, then Evil Dead Burn is about to break a rule the movies have quietly kept for 4.5 decades. Across the franchise, Deadites have possessed humans, mocked the living through corpses, and even animated objects in ways that felt grotesquely alive. But they have never truly leaned into an animal host on the big screen, and that is a much bigger deal than it sounds like at first. Because once the franchise confirms that the evil can fully weaponize animals too, the threat map changes instantly. It means the Deadites are no longer just terrifying because they can turn your family against you. They become terrifying because literally any living thing in the environment could become an attack vector. That kind of expansion matters. Not only does it raise the tension inside this movie, it opens the door for future entries to get much nastier and much less predictable. Yes, Ash vs. Evil Dead already hinted that animals were not off limits in this universe. The possessed bird in season 2 made that clear enough. But television is one thing. A major theatrical entry putting that idea front and center is another. Horror rules become real in the audience's mind when the movies themselves make them unavoidable. If Evil Dead Burn makes that leap official, then this is not just another sequel. It is a franchise evolution. That is part of why the trailer feels so exciting. It is not simply promising more of the same. It is promising continuity and escalation at once. It wants the blood, the black humor, the possession chaos, the mean-spirited creativity, and the brutal practical nightmare energy fans expect. But it also wants 1 or 2 fresh ideas strong enough to make this entry feel dangerous again. A series like Evil Dead should never feel comfortable. It should feel like it is grinning while it breaks one more boundary. The family angle may also give this movie more emotional weight than people expect. Susan's grief, Alice's possible role in unleashing the book, and the hints that the grandfather may have known exactly what kind of evil he was sitting on all suggest that this is not just a random massacre setup. It is a family story poisoned from the inside out. And if the film really ties that into the possibility that these characters are linked to Professor Knowby's wider family line, then the mythology gets even juicier. I also love that the trailer does not appear remotely interested in sanding off the uglier edges. This thing looks vicious. There is wax drinking, body destruction, screaming, fire, blood, panic, and the specific kind of Deadite cruelty that feels theatrical without becoming cute. That balance matters. Evil Dead can be funny, but it should never become safe. The comedy works because it is trapped inside real hostility. The trailer seems to get that. It is gleeful, but not playful. There is a difference, and honestly, that is why Evil Dead Burn is suddenly looking like one of the biggest horror events of the summer. Not because it is the loudest, because it looks like it remembers what the series is supposed to be: fast, mean, inventive, a little unhinged. Willing to make the audience laugh and recoil within the same 30 seconds. That is the sweet spot, and this trailer hits it hard. If the full movie delivers on even most of what this footage is promising, then Evil Dead Burn has a real shot at joining the very top tier of the franchise. The original still has its crown. Evil Dead 2 still has its legend. Evil Dead Rise proved the series could move locations and still stay nasty. But Burn looks like it wants to do something else. Take every lesson the franchise has learned over 45 years and fuse them into one scorched, feral horror machine. And if that possessed dog reveal is real, then the series is about to tell audiences something very simple and very ugly. From now on, nothing is safe. Evil Dead Burn hits theaters in July. And after this trailer, I think the hype is justified. This looks brutal, smart, franchise-aware, and just disrespectful enough to the audience's comfort zone to feel like a proper Evil Dead movie. Until the next one, keep the doors locked, keep the lights on, and if the family dog starts acting weird, maybe do not give it a second chance.